Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Goeiemôre, dames en heren. Moweni, manene, nemanene kazi. It is really a privilege, I think, and an honor for the department to host the Access to Finance webinar today. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Joshua Bormerans. I'm doing the opening for the Access to Finance webinar. I'm the director responsible for enterprise development in the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. As I said, we would like to thank everybody for attending, and I think especially the panelists, and I think we quite a large number of participants already that's joined the conversation this morning. So welcome to everybody. And I think we are quite humbled by the amount of people that have responded to the invitation for the webinar. And we hope that through these conversations, we can clarify a lot of the issues around accessing funding opportunities, especially from your development finance institutions in the Western Cape. So as we all know, access to finance is one of those challenges that are normally one of the top 3 issues that are confronted by small, medium, and micro enterprises. And it impacts on the sustainability and growth of your business. And it's also one of the key areas that we've identified in terms of the queries that we receive through our red tape hotline. So today's discussion forms part of a series of conversations that we're having within the department, but also I think as stakeholders in the SMME ecosystem around the Global Entrepreneurship Month that we celebrate in November. And I think our national boundaries, I think, are as porous as they are with the coronavirus. And it's therefore important to make it imperative for us to seize the opportunity to reboot and to help those that are most severely being affected by the economic downturn. And also, how do we start rethinking together as one global ecosystem to regenerate the jobs that's been lost while helping all economies to rise to an incoming tide of entrepreneurial potential. And I think these conversations is about looking at how do we unlock those opportunities to assist you as small, medium, and micro enterprises and as potential entrepreneurs to access those particular funding opportunities that are available by the different, not just the financial institutions in the private sector, but also the development finance institutions. So the event today focuses on providing that levels of clarity and looking at clearly demonstrating that the Western Cape is open for business and that we want to try and enhance the ease of doing business through dealing with the kind of issues around the access to information, what business need to do to access those opportunities, what are the hurdles, what are the kind of issues that these development finance institutions look at and consider when you do make applications. I think critically, it's also understanding what are the mandates of these particular institutions and organizations. So when we often talk with funders, we get told that there is enough funds around. But when you talk to SMMEs, they say they can't access these funding opportunities. And I think part of the conversation is therefore to see what are the challenges, how do we unblock those challenges in terms of you being able to access those funding opportunities within the Western Cape so that you can assist you to develop and grow. Just also to let you know, I am going to introduce you to Mr. Rashid Tofi, who is the Director General for Economic Operations within the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and he will be responsible to facilitating the discussions today. Maybe just also to note, we will also be issuing a poll during the proceedings today, so if you could kindly assist in terms of just completing that poll, because that will also assist us in terms of looking at how do we look at developing products going forward. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the conversation. And over to you, Mr. Toby. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshua, and good morning, colleagues. Joshua, by mistake, called me the Director General, and I don't think the DG of the province will be happy about that. So I'm one of the Deputy Directors General at the department. My name's Rashid, and I'm going to be the moderator today. So it's what a lekker morning to be here. I wish it was in a venue where we could be sitting, you know, having coffee, shaking hands, and we will be back. I promise. This is I see we've got 100 people here already today. Others are still walking into the room. If we were in a venue, it wouldn't be nice, but I see people are getting in and slowly arriving. Just before I kick off, I just wanted to acknowledge, you know, we've all been through a brutal almost 2 years of COVID. I mean, we all thought it was going to be 1 year. We could all survive and we could we could keep our businesses on life support. But a lot of you out there must have gone through a lot. People have lost lives, loved ones, people close to us, and I want to acknowledge that today. While we here continuing ahead, forging ahead, many people are not here anymore, and we spare a thought and a prayer for those people, and also for people who've lost their businesses, which is in many cases, if you're an entrepreneur, your business is your life. And what we're talking about today is exactly the kind of lifeline that many people need to get your business started. It's like without being too facetious, it's like having the vaccine for post-COVID is you need money, you need funding, you need something to get your business started. And the group of people we've gathered here today are the who's who of the finance institutions that are available to you as a business in the Western Cape. So just a couple of housekeeping matters. I normally have to tell you where the toilets are and where to get coffee, but I hope you all know where that is in your house or in your office. I've got my water and I'm ready to go. So today we have 3 panelists, and yeah, I'm really pleased. We're going to be hearing from Sean Charlie, the current regional manager for SIFA. Then we'll be hearing from Hanif Bardeen from the IDC. And then lastly, from Bongumusa Biyele, who's the regional manager for the National Empowerment Fund. And I just wanted to remind you all that we're in a webinar where you're able to post questions in the Q&A. So there's 2 things you can do. You can make comments in the chat box, but that's predominantly to speak to each other, say hello, and just let us know how you're feeling. But if you've got a very specific question, I would ask you to please put that into the Q&A box. And that way we can either answer the question in writing, either of us, the department or one of the panelists, or I can address that question to a specific individual or to the whole panel. And I'd love this to be engaging. We're going to be hearing a short presentation, just 5 minutes from each of the panelists, followed by me asking a few questions, and then we'll have a nice 20 or 15 minutes at the end where colleagues can ask questions from the audience. And as I said, even when the person is speaking, post your question. We can always absorb your question and then answer it when we get the moment. Okay. So if everyone is nice and comfortable, seated, we're ready to roll. So I'm going to welcome first, the first colleague we're having up on the stage is Mr. Sean Charlie. Sean, welcome. And lekker to have you with us. Sean's the regional manager for SIFA. He's been passionate about SMEs all his life. I mean, I look at your CV, you say 15 years, so he's quite a young guy. But prior to doing this, he's actually had a career in auditing, both internal and external auditing, investments, and development finance. And Sean started his career at Ernst & Young, then moved to business partners before he joined as the regional manager in March 2019. So Sean, it's a privilege to have you here today. I'm going to hand over to you to share your presentation and to tell us a little bit about SIFA. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashid, and thanks for having me. And also, I would like to thank all the entrepreneurs, stakeholders, colleagues that has joined for this webinar. So from my side, SIFA, it has always been, being said, what's the function of SIFA and where does SIFA really fit into our ecosystem of SME funding. So I would normally say SIFA is like the young teenager. We've been around for almost 10 years now, and we have developed skills inside of SIFA in terms of deal structuring and finding products that will enable businesses to grow. I mean, we still have a lot to learn. There's still a lot of lessons that we have learned over the years, and I mean, we're looking at these systems in terms of how we can improve them and also trying to make them also more accessible for entrepreneurs. In terms of the department now, small business department, we are actually the funding arm, where our counterparts at CEDA has more the non-financial support. So this is actually where we fit in terms of the economic cluster. In terms of CIFA, our funding channels, so there's quite a few funding avenues in CIFA. One is the microfinance division that we have. We have SME wholesale lending, which is also on lending onto onto other smaller investment companies that assist SMEs. We have the Kula credit guarantee, where they normally stand as surety for any of the banks that has facilities to assist entrepreneurs. And then where I fit in is in direct lending, where we deal directly with SMEs and see how they develop. So all of these, if you can see, it's sort of divisions that has sort of been consolidated into the entity that we call CIFA. And then post-investment is also a key, I would say, one of our very important divisions in CIFA, where they continue with monitoring the investments that has been made and to ensure that the businesses grow and build a track record for themselves. So this is where collection, restructuring, see if there's mentors required, which I also see as quite a important division in any financial institution. In direct lending, we look at funding, startups, expansions, acquisitions, asset finance, term loans. The criteria is normally South African citizens because of the fact that we are using public funds, state funds, which comes from from Treasury. So in terms for us to develop the country and to ensure that skills are here, we're looking at South African residents, citizens with all permanent resident citizens, individuals. The business must be registered in South Africa. The owner of the businesses that we invest in must be the majority shareholder and must be actively involved in the business. Tax clearance certificates, PINs, it's also needed. And then compliance, which is for me quite important. Whatever industry that your business is trading in, you should have the necessary compliance because of the laws around it. So so these are some of the just the criteria that we have. In terms of our exclusion, so this is industries that we don't get into, or it's businesses that are in certain situations that maybe some sort of circumstance that it's experiencing that we can't really assist with. The certain industries, unfortunately, we are not allowed to consider those applications. Individuals, and there's been quite a few during this COVID period where people have been placed under debt review. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to consider those applications. Labor brokers, insolvent entities, and shareholders also has been seen as one of our exclusions. When we look at funding, we look at funding from certain information that we would need. So this is normally the company information, the shareholders, the ownership structure, production of the business if it's in a specific industry. But market is quite the key for us. We need to understand who's the targeted market, and also is there really a need that you are solving. That's actually the key thing in terms of our deal making. What problem is being solved by this SME? But it differs. The template differs from business to business. And this is where we would like to engage with the entrepreneurs to understand the business model so that we can see how we can assist the business. In terms of our Being Entrepreneurship Month, one of the products that we have is really one of the products that I really am quite close to is the Amavulindlela. It's our disability fund. So this is just for mentioning some of the exciting funds that we have, which is at 2% interest, fixed, So it's a fund where we encourage entrepreneurs with a specific disability to also form part of the economy where they can have their own business and grow their business. So this fund is really a soft fund so that we can make sure that entrepreneurs with disabilities are not excluded, from the mainstream economies. And this is one of the funds that I would really like to encourage entrepreneurs who have any sort of disability that they're living with. They can definitely approach our offices. Then we have the Township and the Rural Entrepreneurship Program. These are programs where we as CIFA with the department in SIDA has designed products where we want the economy of these areas to be self-sustainable. So even not only in our country, I mean, it's across the continent, even in the States, Europe, and on the East, where everybody's talking about localization. Localization is the buzzword across the world, where everyone is talking about being job creators opposed to job seekers. So this fund is actually a fund that also speaks to that, where we want certain communities to be self-sustainable, where they can build their businesses by trading with each other. So the bakery can trade with the clothing business, with the informal restaurant, spaza shops, automotive, butcheries, fruit and vegetables, personal care. So just a simple example, if I should go to a wedding, then I can maybe, if I'm going to a specific community where I'm invited for a wedding, I can approach the bakery for the cake. I can go to the clothing guy who can do my suit. I can grab maybe something to eat before the wedding. The spaza shop if I need some snacks, or the automotive, they can fix my brake pads, Same with the butcheries, the personal care is the guy who can cut my hair and so forth. But the main thing is the fund stays in that community, the funds remains in that area, and that actually, transitions where it can uplift the economy, of that community. And then the community becomes self-sustainable and where they trade with each other. And this fund is really exciting. I mean, same with our manufacturing fund, where we also have a key focus on locally produced products, where we want to assist and invest in those businesses that are viable. Our contact details, I'm prepared to share my direct numbers as well. And and from our side, we really would like to encourage entrepreneurs. COVID has, brought, a lot of anxieties, a lot of doubt. But I firmly believe, coming from a family of entrepreneurs, that, we as South Africans, we are the most innovative entrepreneurs. History has proven it. And we should continue, striving, to build our economy, rebuild our economy, never to lose hope, because entrepreneurs are really the real role models of our communities, in my opinion. And I believe that, with entrepreneurship, that's actually our only goal now going forward, to really restore our economy. And I would also like to encourage all entrepreneurs never to lose hope, and also believe and trust in your abilities. And I thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. That was very comprehensive. We are already starting to get some questions. And so, Sean, please have a look at some of the questions that are in the Q&A to see if you can answer them by typing it, or we'll address it when we get to the questions, okay? Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to check with Josh. People are asking, can they get copies of these slides? I'm assuming they can, right, Joshua? And can we maybe share either a link to the slides or even put them in the chat box? Is that possible?
Yes, Rashid, we will try and make that available so that people can get access to the slides.
Okay, so the slides will be available and the recording as well, because we do record these meetings so that anyone who arrived a little bit late or you want to share it with somebody else, the recording will also be made available. So if you've registered, we should have your details. If not, we'll put it into the sidebar. So, okay, so thank you, Sean. And I'm now going to move on to Hanif. So Hanif, before you start, I'm just welcome and thank you for being here with us. I just wanted to welcome a few people. I mean, I'm amazed at the spectrum of people. I see Anthony from Oudtshoorn, Mr. Besson from Montague. I feel like I'm a radio DJ here, but Karima from Mitchell's Plain, Carlo from the Winelands, Dave from Langebaan. It's amazing. People are coming in from all over the province, and lovely to see the interest. So Hanif, welcome. Hanif is the IDC's regional manager in the Western Cape. And besides his day job, he says he's also tasked with the implementations of the IDC's regional industrial strategy, deal and opportunity sourcing, and that contributes to industrial development and employment. And he comes from a very technical background, and he has previous experience in metals fabrications, manufacturing, mining, chemicals. So you really have got the grease under the nails, eh, Hanif? And in renewables and nuclear. So welcome, Hanif. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Rashid. Yeah, literally, I used to work on power stations, and I really used to get dirty. And now I'm in this office job. Quite a big change. But thank you for the opportunity to present at this webinar. I think it's quite opportune. I remember last year about this time, there was still a lot of uncertainty. And as we were going into the festive season, everyone was hopeful that we would get a bit of a break from COVID, but then the country actually shut down. I think it was like a week before Christmas, and everybody's holiday plans were, were upended. And yeah, it was just a crazy time. But thanks for the Western Cape, to the Western Cape Provincial Government for inviting us. I'm going to talk about the IDC funding for industry development, upgrading, and expansion and transformation. So Sean said that SEFA is the teenager when it comes to the development finance. If SEFA is the teenager, then we are probably the grandfather or the grandmother of development finance. We were established in 1940, so last year we were 80 years old. We couldn't have celebrations because of COVID, but I think that's quite an achievement that a government entity has been around for 80 years. What's interesting about the IDC is our mission since the IDC was established hasn't really changed, right? So our investment philosophy is driven by three things. First of all, structural transformation, and by that we mean is to structurally change the South African economy, originally from a mining economy towards more manufacturing and tertiary industries, because that's when economies sort of get to the next level, to the development level. The second issue for us is social transformation. We to promote economic inclusiveness by supporting entrepreneurs and capital formation, specifically in previously excluded communities. Obviously, we know the history of the country. Some people couldn't participate fully in the mainstream economy, and the IDC wants to correct that as far as we can. And then the last important issue, and I guess this is an important issue for all organizations nowadays. It's got two legs. The one is for us financial sustainability, that the IDC can be self-sustaining, although we are a government entity, and obviously to facilitate investment and growth that contributes to mitigating the impact of climate change. So that's become an important issue increasingly in how we choose our investments and what we expect from companies when we invest in them. Just to add, we report to the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. We have an independent board of directors that basically governs how the IDC is run. And then we implement most of government's policies affecting the economy. I say most because perhaps there are one or two where we are actually the sort of influencer back to government to consider it, to consider a specific economic policy. So I just wanted to show this slide. Obviously, we are national. We've got offices in every province. In the Western Cape, we've got an office in Cape Town, and we have satellite infrastructure in George. It was at the CEDA office in George. But if colleagues are struggling to get a hold of anybody here, of anybody there, I'll put my cell number in the chat, and people can just give me a call. So if people can see here, COVID had a dramatic impact on our business. I just wanted to sort of, sorry, yeah. So COVID had a dramatic impact on our business. We used to do about 11.8 billion in funding approvals a year. Last year, it dropped to 5.6 billion. Not too bad given the circumstances, but it's 45% down. And a lot of our funding is targeted at creating jobs. It was 68% down because of COVID. Funding disbursed, this is where we actually pay out funding to industry. That was down 46%. We still managed to put 6.3 billion in the economy, nowhere near what we are used to. And then for BEE and Black industrialist companies, we approved 3.9 billion, which was also down at 25%. So overall, COVID, as I suppose hit everybody, the amount of applications that came through during COVID were much less than previous years for obvious reasons. The shutdowns didn't help. With all the uncertainty, the economy is shut down and then it opened up and shut down. So a lot of businesses really didn't want to apply for financing. So a lot of this funding that we put out were for companies that were involved in producing the essential products for COVID, like masks and some of the medical stuff. And yeah. So where do we get our funds? So although we're a government entity, the IDC doesn't really get funding from government. I think we got funding the last time probably in the 1950s to start SASL. So we generate our own funds. We borrow funds on capital markets. We've got a lot of investments where people pay out us dividends, and then we manage funds on behalf of other entities like the DTI, or it could even be foreign entities who have a particular interest in promoting, for example, entrepreneurship in the South African economy, or green energy and so forth. So, like I said, we get interest payments, and we have capital repayments. We get dividend payments. And obviously, where we invested in, if there's a capital growth in that company, in other words, the company has increased in value, we sometimes exit those investments and we use that funding to plow back into the economy. So how are we structured? Since this is more about small business, the small business finance in the regions where I'm sitting, we fall under the agro-industry value chain. And yeah, so all our regional offices look at small businesses. And by small, because small is a relative thing, I suppose, not as small as what CIFA and NEF would look at, but we overlap a bit between the other two institutions. So for us in small business and regions, we look at minimum funding of R1 million and up to 15 million rand, 15. And if there are larger funding requirements, that we normally refer to our head office, and that goes then to the various value chains, like we have mining, metals, infrastructure, and energy. So if your application is in the energy sector, we refer you to the energy business unit. Manufacturing, we've got machinery and equipment and electronics, automotive, chemicals, textiles. Yeah, we'll refer you to those entities. But those are only for funding amounts above 15 million. Below 15 million and below, we will process the applications ourselves, irrespective of the specific sector you come from. Then, because we are national DFI, we perform all of the activities associated with DFIs. We do obviously development finance. We do a lot of research into sectors and economic research. We provide inputs into government policy. Then I spoke to the sectoral involvement in terms of the funding that we offer. We offer debt, equity, quasi-equity. We can look at short-term trade finance, bridging finance, guarantees. and sometimes we will provide wholesale funding to intermediaries. So our focus, like CFA, is very much South Africa, but we have expanded, and we do look at projects in the rest on the rest of the continent, and we have funded a couple of them, but mainly larger projects. For small business, our focus is only in South Africa. Like Sean presented earlier, we also manage a lot of different funds. Like we have the Grow Youth Scheme for people 35 years and less, and these funds come at very attractive rates. The fund size there is 950 million rand, and the pricing is prime -2. Again, the minimum is £1 million and the maximum is 50 million rand. So I'm not going to go through all of these funds. Just to say, MSEP, we manage that on behalf of the DTI, more for sort of manufacturing entities. Then we still have economic distress funds available as well for companies that were negatively affected by COVID and are still trying to sort of get back to where they were before the pandemic. We can look at what their requirements and try and assist them. We have the UIF fund. A recent fund that was brought on board is the Agri-Industrial Fund. What is very attractive about this fund is that there's up to a 40% grant for qualifying enterprises, but the company must be a minimum 60% Black owned. And then the last fund here is the Agro Processing Competitiveness Fund. And this is also a fund to facilitate smaller business in the agricultural sector and agro-processing sector to get into the, or to grow their businesses sort of in the mainstream of those sectors. Quickly about our process. So when you apply to the IDC, it's not like when you apply to a bank, you fill in the form, you send it through, and then they say yes or no. So we do have an online application, but our assessment begins with face-to-face, either virtually nowadays. We can talk to you on Zoom or Teams, or we can meet at our offices. We then get we require sort of business plan, not a 100-page document, say a 5 to 10 pages telling us what you want to do, right? What we'll use that business plan for is to conduct a quick assessment if we can fund this, can fund your entity. If we determine that we are able to, we do a full due diligence. We then go to a credit committee. After the credit committee approves, you sign legal agreements. And once you've signed those legal agreements, we will disperse funding to you. Sometimes it's milestone based. We don't disburse all the funding immediately. It depends on the milestones of your business plan as well. So what we require shareholder management information, your background, skills, and experience. This is very, very important for small businesses. We want to understand that you do actually have the skills and capabilities or track record for a small business. We require financial information. We usually require audited information, but for smaller businesses, we now look at compiled or reviewed information. And if we're not happy, we may determine that we will want the information to be audited. But that we can work with you on that. Market information, I think Sean mentioned the same thing. We understand that, you know, your customers, the size of the market, where you fit in, how are you going to sort of win market share, your competitiveness, your competition, and so forth. Technical information, very important. This is where a lot of small businesses fall down. What's your technical requirements? If you're a manufacturing entity, perhaps it's easy in clothing and textiles, but when you come to agro processing, say for example, setting up a juice manufacturer, there are a lot of issues to consider because there's, you know, because it's the food industry, there's cleanliness issues, you need the right certification. We need to understand where you are getting your plant and equipment from. Do you understand what you're buying? All those kinds of things, right? And one of the main reasons where...
Can you please wrap up? Because we just
okay,
over time.
This is my last slide and I'm wrapping up.
Please.
So I just wanted to add the main reason why submissions are held up is because we don't get the right information well, but we'll discuss that further later. Thanks, Rashid. So that's my.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And Hanif and Sean and the ones who've presented, please go ahead and look at. There's a lot of questions from the audience and very, very valid questions. We will try to get to some of them, and the balance we will try to make sure you do get answered. Every question will be answered either here or afterwards. Okay. So thank you, Hanif. So my next speaker is Bongomusa Biele. And Bongomusa, welcome. How's it?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chairperson. I truly appreciate this opportunity.
I don't see you yet. Just share your camera, and then I'm going to quickly just tell people about you. Bongomusa's he's got 18 years in banking and development finance of experience, and he's worked for companies such as FNB, Itala Development Finance, and from 2015 onwards, Bongomusa has joined the NEF. He's got a BCom degree and an MBA, and he's passionate about helping small businesses grow. So, Bongomusa, thank you for being with us today, and you have your time to present your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashid. Truly appreciate the opportunity. Let me try and share my screen here. Alrighty. All right, so I will come back to this information here, but I'll just tell you a little bit about the NEF, the products that we have, and how to access funding from the NEF. So as indicated earlier, my name is Bongomusa Biele. I'm the Regional Manager for the National Empowerment Fund here in the Western Cape. Just a bit about the NEF. We were established in terms of the National Empowerment Fund, number 105 of 1998, so that we can become a driver and thought leader in promoting and facilitating Black economic participation. We do this through the provision of financial and non-financial support to Black empowered businesses. So the presentation that I will cover today mainly focuses on the financial and the non-financial support. I'll try to be as quick as possible in order to make sure that I cover both sections. When we say Black empowered business, we're talking about a business that is at least 51% Black owned. In other words, a business that is majority Black owned. The NEF is the only agency within the DTI that is has an exclusive mandate to grow BBBEE. You will also note in terms of products that we have and how we actually implement them to, as to how we actually able to grow this, to contribute to the growth of BBBEE. All right, so we have 5 funds within, these are traditional funds that we've always had for a number of years now. We do have special funds. I'll cover them a little bit as well, and the rest will probably cover through the questions and answers session. All right, so the Imbeu fund that we have, it's more of a SME fund. It's looking at businesses that require finance of between 250,000 to 15 million. There are 3 products within this particular fund: Entrepreneurship Finance, which could be for any business and that you want to set up, whether you're looking at a startup, an acquisition of an existing business, or you're looking at expanding your existing business. This funding may be able, this product may be able to assist you. The procurement finance is looking at those businesses that have been given opportunities, procurement office opportunities by public or private sector. We could be able then to help you if you don't have funds to fulfill those contracts or those orders. We will be able to assist you with that, with this product. Franchise finance is one of the other products. We've worked with quite a number of franchisors in the industry. I normally show a screen when I talk about this, just to give an indication of the type of franchisors that we've worked with. But if anyone that is interested in a franchise opportunity, just do call us. We will be able to get back to you and give you the necessary guidance. We have a Women Empowerment Fund, starts from 250,000 to 75 million. This fund is aimed at promoting the inclusion of women entrepreneurs in the mainstream of the economy. And how do we do this? This funding is always priced slightly less than the funding that would have been received by a male, 100% male-owned business. And why do we do this? We mainly do it for, to ensure that we entice women entrepreneurs to get into the, into business and, to grow and build their businesses as well. We have a Rural and Community Development Fund, which supports businesses that are in a rural setting. So it could be a rural town, a rural. It could be a rural town, it could be a rural area. As projects that we've funded through this particular fund will include your agro-processing plants. It will include hotels in the rural areas. It will include shopping centers and shopping malls. So basically, it could be any type of an opportunity that you're thinking about, as long as the requirement is within that funding threshold of 1 million to 50 million. And it has the two aspects. The first aspect is it must be in a rural setting, and the second aspect is that there must be some level of community involvement. Community involvement could come in any in a form of a community trust that is set up in order for that community to benefit from that particular business, and or it could be an employees trust where the employees that work for that particular business will have a percentage of ownership in that business. So again, it's those things that would be important for that fund. And then Umnotho Fund is more of our corporate fund. We're looking at investments or funding thresholds of between 2 million and 75 million. Here, again, we're doing acquisitions, we're doing new ventures, we're doing project finance, we're doing expansion. So again, just give us a call. There is obviously a number of things that we go into. I keep on talking about acquisition, for an example. We don't just, throw money into, the acquisition transactions. We have to make sure that when we help you acquire a business, you are actually acquiring something of value, something that will not put you in a difficult position in a couple of months' time or in a couple of years' time. So we conduct our own valuations just as much as you would have conducted your valuation. And based on our experience, we will be able to give you something that, that we believe would be, both fair to you, but most importantly, affordable to the business as well. And then we have a fund called Strategic Projects Fund. And this fund looks at your high impact projects. And here we are able to invest at early stages. So for example, it could be somebody that has started the process of setting up a business, and they've done certain feasibility studies, but then they've found that there is certain studies that need to be executed. For an example, it could be, an EIA. We know that EIAs could cost in excess of $1 million sometimes, and you find that an entrepreneur does not have that kind of funding available. And because these are high impact projects that normally creates a high number of jobs, and we are able then to invest at early stages and basically go into the transaction together with the applicant. We work together. We cover those costs that need to be covered. We take a percentage of ownership, and then we work together in that in that transaction to take it to financial close. I spoke about the special funds that we have, and these are some of them. So we were lucky over the past few years, I believe since 2013, we've had a very good relationship with the Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism, where together we set up an enterprise development fund, where they gave us annually they give us a certain amount of money that we are able to use in structuring transactions within the Western Cape to ensure that entrepreneurs within the Western Cape are able to access affordable funding. This funding has been very successful. We funded quite a number of transactions through this fund. How it works is that we take 60% of the funding from our own coffers, meaning the NEF, and that funding will be priced in line with the NEF pricing model. So in other words, it will be prime linked, and then the portion that comes from the Western Cape DDAT is priced at anything between 0% and 5%, depending on the risk that is involved in the transaction. And wherever it lands, it's fixed for the term of the loan, and that makes it affordable to our clients. We have also set up, last year during the peak of COVID, we worked with the DTI to set up a fund called NEF COVID-19 Black Business Fund. That funding was to assist businesses that were providing assistance or providing consumables that were needed during the peak of COVID. So, for example, it could have been sanitizer businesses, and could have been PPE, medical PPE businesses. And we funded quite a few of them. That funding has since been exhausted. We also did an economic distress fund, also together with the DTIC, and that funding has already been exhausted. We currently have a Black Business Manufacturing Program. This funding was introduced this year in the market. We still have some funds available, and this is also affordable funding that is available to manufacturing businesses. It's very concessionary in nature. 80% of the funding that you require will come from this particular fund. 80% will be priced at 2.5%, and that will be fixed for the term of the loan. And the 20%, the remaining 20% will come from the NEF coffers. Obviously, that will be prime linked. The maximum
if you could just start to wrap up, yeah?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we have Women Empowerment Fund, also structured exactly the same way as the Women Empowerment Fund. Sorry, as the Black Business Manufacturing Program. And then we have Economic Recovery Fund. This one is for KZN-based businesses. This is the criteria that we have. I'll just take a couple of points that I have not covered. So minimum requirement as far as Black ownership, 51%. Managerial and operational involvement, extremely important. Business must be commercially viable. Job creation, extremely important. Special product criteria will be provided to you as you talk to us. So in other words, we'll give you guidance. Geographical location is important. Community involvement important. Compliance with all relevant laws and regulations goes without saying. And whenever there's a possibility for us to co-fund a transaction with other funders, we take that opportunity. Just want to cover this post-investment finance, which is part of the non-financial support that we provide. So the businesses that we lend to, what we do as part of the assessment process, we look at the skills gap that may exist in a business. And if we find that there is a skill gap that needs to be covered, we appoint a mentor that will be able to assist in that space to cover that gap. And we actually follow through on this as well, even on businesses where gaps were not identified. And as we continue to manage the transaction through our post-investment activities, we are able to identify gaps, and we appoint mentors at that particular point in time. So yeah, in a nutshell, this is the NEF products and services. I'm sure the rest of the information will actually come out as we continue to engage today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bongomusa. That was great. And I know there's a lot of information. I'm sorry to rush you, but I do want us to also get to people's questions, so thank you. Thank you, panelists. I'm gonna ask you all to come back onto the stage. So Bongomusa can stop sharing, and then we'll all be back. I'm gonna start by running a quick poll. So if you can just see it come up on your screen. The first poll is about compliance documentation, and I'm launching it now. Please go ahead and quickly answer the 3 questions, and then we'll see what the results is. results are. Is your business tax compliant? Are you compliant with all regulations and the bylaws in the industry? And does your business have annual financial statements? So if people can go ahead and answer that, I'll give it a few minutes. And while we're doing that poll in the background, I want to address a quick question to each of you. So Hanif, Sean, and Bongomuso, you can put your camera on, and then we can all be visible to people. You know, government generally by default can take long with applications. And so can you tell me, you know, what are the hurdles that applicants need to avoid in order for this not to take so protracted and take so long, you know? So Sean, can I start with you? I see you on my top left of my screen here. What's your advice to help people make sure that this doesn't take so long, you know?
Yeah, Rashid, good question. I think, it really comes down to the quality of the information, you know, the credibility of the information. I think because we are deal makers. So we have to implement policies. We're not policy makers. As DFIs, you know, with my counterparts here, we are the implementers of these funds. So we are the deal makers. So what information we receive, we normally have to look at how credible are the information and how reliant is the information. And my encouragement to entrepreneurs is, you know, build an ecosystem, that you can tap into. Whether it's, I know with certain consultants and professionals, it costs funding, but there are a lot of platforms now where I see there's lawyers and accountants on those platforms. Form part of it, build stakeholder relationships in your business, you know, work with the right guys. And I think that will also open up, the capabilities for you to be able to present your information more credible, because once we have received information that's not credible, it's up and down the whole time, you know, trying to figure out what's the, so that's normally the challenge for us.
We tend to underestimate how difficult, I mean, how networks, you take it for granted, you assume you have a network, but not everybody has that natural network, you know? So, yeah. Cool, well, thank you. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sean, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying what I've learned, you know, I have family and friends and, you know, previous colleagues, you know, that went into entrepreneurship. And I can tell you now that the guys, the difference, because a lot of them failed, I mean, at running their own businesses. And a lot of them also become very, very successful. And the difference, the ultimate difference between, you know, a successful and, you know, an entrepreneur that's still building the business is really how far you can really network, you know, how relationships you can build for your business, you know. So I mean, it's a skill that's learned, you know, you can learn it. It's not something that everybody's born with, but if you really like what you are doing and you're passionate about what you are doing, you can always talk about your product, and that's how networking actually starts. So it's something that we do understand. It's not natural, but I think it's definitely a skill that if you are passionate about your business and the product that you are selling, goods or services, it should come naturally to you if somebody asks you about your business.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to you next, Hanif, to answer the same question. I've just seen the poll has been answered by 64% of you. So I'm going to share the results. Just confirm that you can you see those results? So yeah, 91% of people say they are tax compliant. Don't know if you guys agree, if that's your experience. Are you compliant with the rules and bylaws in your industry? Another 91%. Does your business have annual financial statements? 79%. I personally know when I had a business, it was like sometimes a 30,000 Rand experience to go and get an auditor. So you tend to not get audited, but those are the little things you have to deal with. And if so, you know, yeah, so you can see the answers there. Yeah, 20% say they're independently reviewed, 18% they audited. So it's interesting just to see what other people are doing. Thank you everybody for adding to that webinar, to that poll. I shall just switch that off for now. Hanif, your answer to that question about how these things can take long, what are the hurdles people must avoid?
Yeah, I think just on the compliance issue, obviously very important, tax compliance. If you're not tax compliant, we consider that as a fatal flaw. So we wouldn't be able to provide funding. So I'm going to answer it like this, right? From an IDC perspective, it's easier for us to process a R1 billion application than a 15 million rand application. And you may ask why, right? Because a large company will tick all the boxes, right? They usually come with transaction advisors. They've got the right information that we need. They've got sophisticated financial models, and so it's almost like a plug-in into our systems. We obviously have to vet that information, but it's easier from a deal-making perspective in terms of a meeting of minds between IDC deal makers who are generally chartered accountants or engineers, and that of a large, say, mining company who would have their own chartered accountants, engineers, and on top of it, business advisors from, say, one of the top 5 firms, like, say, for example, at KPMG, McKinsey. When it comes to small business, and I think Sean, I think Sean elaborated well on this. It's the information, right? Most of the time when we get the application, it's very difficult to make a quick assessment. So we'd have to go through that information step by step. So we'll get the first batch of information, we look through it, we see there's a lot of missing stuff. We then go back to the entrepreneur. It takes him a while, and then he gets back to us eventually, and so forth. So how do we overcome that problem? It's not an easy problem to overcome. We're grappling with it internally in the IDC, and what we are trying to sort of look at now is to segment the types of information we require in terms of an application. So, for example, if you have a contract from Woolworths to manufacture juice, right? And Woolworths has given you a contract, it's signed on the dotted line. Do we then really need to look at all the other stuff that we would require? So that we want to move to a situation where we don't request unnecessary information. We can respond quickly to entrepreneurs where there's comfort. For example, that you're tax compliant. We have comfort in the contract that you're providing to us, and we can take a quicker decision. When it comes to, for example, a startup, it's a completely different story. There, unfortunately, we would have to do a much more in-depth analysis. But I think that you're going to address in another question, so I will stop there for now. I just wanted to add, I do think as institutions, we could probably do a bit better in adapting our processes to respond better to entrepreneurs, and especially nowadays with all the fintech that's available, we could, and we're looking into this, perhaps use some of those kinds of technologies for us to be more responsive to entrepreneurs. Thanks.
I got you. And Bongumusa, what's your reply? And we don't have to answer these questions separately. I mean, it's just what are the hurdles we have to avoid? And maybe I can ask you the second question. People, why are people sometimes unsuccessful? What advice can you give people against those kind of where their applications are unsuccessful?
Right. So thank you again. The most common problem that we identify, I'm sure my colleagues will also attest to this, is that when applicants come to us, they come to us with a proposal that has not necessarily that does not necessarily confirm access to markets. And that becomes a huge issue in our space, because we provide our funding is not normally secured funding, much like you would find with the banks, where they would fund one-to-one, against security. Most of the funding that we provide as development finance institution is largely unsecured. And because of that, we have to make sure, as at the point of lending, that the business will in fact be able to generate the revenues that they are saying that they will generate through their financial projections, and and from those profits they will be able to cover the expenditure that they have identified, and therefore will be able to repay the loan. Now, the most important thing on our side when it comes to the analysis, it is now to prove or to confirm that those assertions made in those financial projections are in fact true or verifiable at the least. So for an example, lending to a business that has contracts with clients, it becomes easier because now you can look at that contract and you will be able to assess whether or not the provisions of the contract, the terms of the contract, allow for that business to generate that projected revenue. In cases where businesses don't have contracts, you have then the other option of proving the market is you provide market studies. And those market studies would have to be very detailed and we have to be, as close to the truth as possible. So it shouldn't be a thumbs up kind of an information. And unfortunately, we do see that kind of, output coming from, different service providers in the industry. It's unfortunate. It's there. It happens. And unfortunately, we end up not being able to fund a business that would otherwise have been funded if the financial the market analysis information that was provided was of a better quality. So those are the main things that cause us to decline applications. Obviously, there's quite a few things that are linked to all of this. Compliance issues with all of the matters that were identified by my colleagues previously. They will also talk to it, because if you're lending to a business that will sell food, guess what? You need to talk to the municipality and get those food handling licenses. If you're building a hotel, you need building plans. You can't come to me without having at least drafted building plans and costed them, so that we are able to see what the actual cost of this particular structure is going to be before we actually start the process. So those are the kind of things that I can just speak to briefly.
Thanks, Bongomuso. Just check if your phone's on mute, because we're getting pings. Bongomuso, while I've got you, I just want to ask you, because we're in a live chat here. Somebody asked, I believe you have a taxi relief fund to mitigate COVID. Can you, the NEF, David Drummond asked that question. Can you quickly answer that one for me?
All right, so this is an initiative of the Department of Transport. So the National Empowerment Fund are more the implementers of this program. And so far, we've been working with the National Department of Transport with the aim of getting to a point where our systems are able to talk to their systems and talk to the CIPC system, so that we can then implement. So we will be implementing this, later this year. If I'm not mistaken, I think the launch will be around the 26th or earlier this month, and then it will be properly launched. So it is too early for me to speak to that. The information that I'm basically giving is because I happen to be working with the team that's implementing it.
But thank you for the update. It's nice to just hear it straight from you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I want to go back to Sean and Hanif. Hanif, do you have any more things to add if I were to ask you why people are unsuccessful? Or do you think you've covered that? What are the common reasons why people are unsuccessful when they apply to you as the IDC?
If I can make a sort of a rough guesstimate, I read a lot of business plans that we get at our offices, right? Probably 2 out of 10 we could really seriously consider. The rest are not well considered particularly in terms of one aspect. Does it make sort of business sense. If you think about your business plans, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, right? So a lot of entrepreneurs, when they come to us, they say, fund me, because I'm saying it's going to work. But a funder doesn't look at it that way, right? So we look at it quite differently. We look at the viability, right? We look at what the sort of logic or the sense that you've put into that business plan. Does it make sense to us, right? I remember seeing one where it was a startup company, small, and within the first year, they were going to have 300 million rand in revenues. Now, obviously, we spend a lot of money doing research in industries and so forth, and that would really not be feasible. If it were, a lot of people would obviously enter that industry. So I think when entrepreneurs come to us, I think the first question they have to ask themselves, right? What is this business plan trying to tell a funder? Does it provide comfort? Would it provide comfort to a funder that this is a credible business plan? And one way you can do that, right? Let other people read it. Before you come to IDC or NEF, and go to, maybe to CEDA and ask them, read my business plan. Does it make sense to you, right? Or if you have family that's accountants or relations that are accountants, let them read it for you, right? Then the other issue is a fatal flaw, right? And this is a lot driven by compliance issues. If you in agriculture, you have to have a water license. If you're, like Bonga Musa said, if you're in food, you have to have local municipality. If you don't have those things, right, we can't fund you, because we would get audit findings against ourselves, right? And but generally, and this is just my experience, about 2 out of 10, I think, when we get business plans, is what we can work with.
No, I hear you. Thank you. And just a quick question to you, Hanif, from David John. Do you assist? Would you be able to assist a media startup? Does that qualify for business support? Just a quick answer. We don't have to go into detail, because you can always reach out to the guy directly.
We do have a media section, but we obviously, I've posted my details. You can just contact me, and then we can discuss it further.
No problem. Cool. And then Sean, back to you. I mean, again, this issue of the network comes up again, but why in your case are people unsuccessful? What would you give people advice?
I think generally, okay, in the DFI space, remember with the IDC, NEF, we sort of the younger brother of the youngest brother of the, so by our very nature, you know, we have to take a little bit more in the IDC and the NEF. So from our side, we try to really to make deals work, you know, each and every application, you know, we try to look for that viability in the deal. But generally, I would definitely, you know, confirm that, you know, the 2 biggest things is really character, you know. Character risk is probably our biggest risk, you know, and it goes along with a few things. Whether you come to CIFA and you have a judgment, you know, we would like to see how you have acted, or you have a default. You know, have you went back to your creditors, you know, try to make an arrangement just to show that, you know, we have comfort in you and honoring your agreements with us, you know. So also in character, it's your capabilities, you know. Do you have a specific expertise? You know, if you're going to start a manufacturing plant, you know, have you built a team? You know, because sometimes I actually prefer looking at teams. Entrepreneur, you know, he has the vision, but does he have a solid team that he has put together to execute on the business plan? So this all speaks to his character, acumen, you know. So we look really at the jockey. You know, for me, the jockey is like, I want to trust the entrepreneur. Honestly, I want to believe in the entrepreneur. I want to believe in his vision. And that's what they need to sell to us. You know, what will they do if this business, you know, go through a hump? Will they show character, you know, and pull it through? And then the second thing, Bongo Musa has actually highlighted, is really market. You know, do you have a product that is acceptable to the market? And, you know, is it really a competitive product? You know, are you priced well? You know, will there be uptake of your product? You know, so if there's not enough credibility behind your projections, you know, it's very difficult for us to put a financial model together that states that the business is viable. So I think these are two key things that I believe entrepreneurs should really, you know, invest in, you know, whether it's, you know, through networks or through some sort of training. But it's really about the character of the entrepreneur. And I think of his market, the problem that he's really solving. Is this product really viable, and, you know, is it relevant to the target market that it's catering to? Thank you.
So Sean, just one of the questions from Siyabonga Mini was, if I've got a business and I don't generate 1 million annually, I've been operating for 3 years, but I'm still, you know, just at 500K annually. Can't we apply for CFA funding? Just a quick answer. Let's keep it short because I'm going to try and get through all these questions. You can apply, right?
Yes.
That's the quick answer is you can apply. It doesn't have to be, you know, yeah. Cool. Thank you. And then for all of you guys, I mean, everybody's one person, Keenan asks here, you always say, go and get professional advice, but why can't this be some of the help that you provide? Like to help someone with these intricacies. That's the actual question. Because not everybody has that help, you know, that accountant friend or something like that. Anybody want to answer that briefly? The question asked by Keenan?
All right. So, yeah, when it comes to that, I mean, we are development finance institutions. So as Sean has indicated earlier on, we are there to listen. So it's not, you know, one does not necessarily have to have, you know, a chartered accountant in the, you know, in their family in order for them to know whether the opportunity that is in front of them is viable. Call us. Talk to one of our funders. We'll allocate somebody to speak to you. In my case, I'm the one. In the case of the NEF, I'm the one as the regional manager that has the responsibility to provide guidance. You know, where such guidance is required, and in some cases, I will allocate. If it's something that we have dealt with before, then I'll allocate somebody to assist. But you know, as development finance institutions, we are required by, you know, our shareholders to handhold entrepreneurs and assist them as they look at different opportunities. Whether you are looking to acquire a business, we step in to say, hey, this business is overpriced. You cannot buy it. We will not assist you, but also it's not a good idea for you to get involved in this. Because of these points. If you're looking to start a new business, we will still tell you, okay, for you to be able to, you know, to implement this business successfully, these are the things that you need to look at. You know, obtain this from these people, and in cases where we know where certain things must be obtained, we are able to guide as well to say, you know, go to the municipality and talk to them about these sort of things, go to this particular entity to talk about this and all of it. So it is our responsibility, and we do carry out that responsibility. So entrepreneurs can call us to get guidance. To get that kind of advice.
No, I hear you, and I know the others are going to answer. While I'm doing that, I'm going to launch another poll, which is the poll asking you about startup funding. So please, we can double track here. While the poll's open, I'm just going to keep it open for like a minute. If you could please try and answer that, and then we'll gauge what are some of the types of reasons why you need funding. Can everybody see that? I hope you can see the poll. How much funding do you require approximately? What will funding be used for? You know, machinery, debt, land. Do you have any proof of your market? So I've launched that poll. I don't see anybody answering it, but okay, there we go. So it is working. Sean, you were going to answer? Yeah. Or was it Hanif? Sean, go for it.
I think, yeah, I'm echoing what Musa said, you know. Yeah, reach out to us, you know, or drop us email, you know, email if you can't reach us on our landline or mobile lines, you know, our email addresses is also available. So, but, you know, try to speak to us, in terms of any specific challenge that you have. And we will listen, and we will look with our stakeholders, how we can assist you and see if we can put you in touch with the relevant people. But what we are trying to say is, DFIs, you are not on your own, I think we are developmental, financial institutions. So our mandate is different from the private sector and the bankers. Our mandate is really to make sure that entrepreneurs with good market, good character, have financial support to grow the economy. So that's
I hear you.
my
Yeah. Cool. Hanif, anything from your side? Just briefly.
I've posted my contact details. I encourage anybody, if they have some issues that they want to discuss on their business plans specifically, we would be very happy to look into that and assist.
Yeah, and I'm not wrapping up the webinar. I've just meant in response to that, but it's fine. So I'm going to end this current poll we've had, and I'll share the details. Just have a look at the panelists as well. Now, obviously, 97% of people say they need funding. I think that's why they're here. And here's how much funding people think they require. So it seems like, 36% of people sort of need that sweet spot of between 250K to R1 million. 21% of people feel they need more than that, 19%. So now a whole 40% of people are saying they would be able to require funding between 1 and 5 million. And just 7% say they're needing a small amount of funding, less than 100K. And what are the funding needs for? This is very valuable information for these speakers from the DFIs. Predominantly, people say for starting businesses, not predominantly, 22%, 70% are saying it's for expanding. And that's my next question to the panel here. And then here you can see what people need it for. Operating expenses, 62%, 29% say land and buildings, vehicles, machinery and equipment, 48% of people say that's it. And then do people have a proof of market? Just 89%, 11% say they don't have a proof of market. Who's going to be buying their product? So I'm going to go quickly to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to try and address the questions in the Q&A box. But what is the difference? How different or difficult is it for people applying for startup funding versus expansion funding? Hanif, let me start with you.
Startups is always difficult. I think because the key issue there is the market, right? You don't have a market yet. You're starting your business, so you're wanting a DFI to put money behind you, right? I think just to clear up a misconception, DFIs generally don't provide 100% of the funding. So, for example, you require 5 million rand for a startup. We won't put in 100% of that funding, right? We require some own contribution from entrepreneurs, what we sort of refer to as skin in the game, right? And that could be any amount, but you have to put in something, right? If the IDC, for example, has to put in the 100% of the funding, that means it's our startup. We're taking all the risk, right? It's not that we won't support startups, but we want there to be a coming together of everyone, ourselves, the entrepreneur, and sometimes entrepreneurs have additional sources of funding. Then why is it difficult, right? Because when you do a startup application, there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Obviously, it's easier depending on the type of startup. Clothing and textiles is quite easy to start up. You need a couple of machines, you need material, you have your designs, you need a bit of skill to sew and so forth. But say, for example, you want to start a plastics manufacturing company. Now, that's a whole different dimension. You may have the background, say you worked in the plastics industry, you worked on that type of machinery. You may have the technical background to do the the production process, right? But you may not have that technical background to actually commission a plant, right? So that's where
that's the
there's
I'm going to stop you there because we got to keep the answers short and sharp so that I can answer people's questions. So I got you. Sean, did you want to add the difference between expansion and startup funding and the challenges of those differences?
Yeah, I think Hanif is sort of actually pretty much put it nicely, you know. Startups, you have to find, we need to verify the market that is going to be obtained. Expansion is easy because there's a trend, you know, that we can follow and see if the business has the affordability. So generally, startups are difficult to finance. And I mean, pre-COVID, you know, only about 8%, I think, of startup make it past year 3. So that statistic gives you how difficult it is to start a business. That's why I emphasize again, build networks, build the ecosystem. Expansions are much easier in terms of the due diligence, in terms of verifying the market and seeing where the risk in the business are that you need to capacitate, you know, and bring in, you know, industry experts, you know, to make sure that the business grows. But we do have to fund startups. And I believe that startups, you know, the first 6 months of the startup, or I would say the first 18 months, that's the infant stage. You know, it's like a baby being born. That 18 months is crucial in a startup. That's why entrepreneurs have to be focused, have to be lean, have to make huge sacrifices. Past that 18 months, then I think the business should be fine. But generally, startups are more difficult to fund in an expansion transaction. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to try and go to some of the questions now, and I'm asking Sharif and Josh, please. I can't answer all the questions, and I'd like the panelists and my team here to please answer some of the questions which are available, which are able to be done with a simple yes or no or an answer. You know, so let me just have a look. Obviously, there's been some questions about supporting women-owned businesses rather than Black-owned businesses. I think people have answered that quite clearly, but if anybody wants to comment on that. And then somebody is asking you, Bongo Musa, I'm interested in finding out about Rural and Community Development Fund. Again, is there a quick answer to that?
Yes, they can call our office. We will discuss. We want to hear what the project they have in mind is, and then we'll give the necessary guidance.
Okay. All right. And then a couple of people are asking, are there any more grants? All we've spoken about today are loans. Are there still grants or subsidized loans? I'm gonna sort of ask that, not going to go to you individually. If anybody wants to answer that, that's open to any of my panelists here. A question from Michael Fortune. Are there still grants available, or are we talking predominantly loans, or are there any subsidized loans? Anybody want to answer that? Sure.
Yeah, so a lot of our loans are concessionary. In other words, the interest rates are quite attractive. Depending on the, it could be sector dependent. We also have concessionary loans for women entrepreneurs and Black entrepreneurs. When it comes to grants, right? So grants we normally get from other government departments, and we manage it on their behalf, right? I spoke to the Agro-Industrial grant before. But grants are very scarce to get from government. Where we have, we apply it, but they are generally very difficult to get. But if people want more information, contact us, and we'll see if there are grants available in your specific sector.
Okay, cool, thank you. Anybody else want to answer that? Or we don't have to have each person answer, so it's fine.
Yeah, the grants are normally it's not grants. I think we need to. It's actually a blended product, you know. So it's debt coupled with a minimum grant amount. So it can be depending on, you know, on the impact of the developmental impact of the business. So this is where once all of the information is, you know, provided by the client, there is a viable business plan, you know, there is some sort of, you know, then we can look at the assessment, you know, in terms of how the grant portion will contribute to the business. So, but these decisions are also subject to the committee, because some businesses, you can see that, you know, grants are for deserving entrepreneurs, where you can see that the business really a grant will have huge impact in making the facility more affordable, and the gearing of the business, you know, are usually reduced. So if you look at those factors, you know, with the developmental impact, that's where the grant portions at CFA, when we use our blended finance instrument, you know, that's where it actually, you know, comes into a place. But we don't do grants facility, you know, indirect lending only. But also on the issue with grants, we look at specific sectors, and also encouraging, like localization is one of the key policies in the country. So if you're in manufacturing, you know, there will be a portion of grant funding that we would like to invest in your business, so that we can see you also becoming a local producer that contributes to GDP, job growth, and to the greater economy of the country. Thank you.
Okay. There's many questions here, and you have to understand, folks, we've had about 45 questions, and we can't answer them all. So I'm trying to see which ones I'm able to answer. I think we answered very clearly, right, that finance houses don't do what you call the sin industry. So nobody's going to finance buying an existing distillery, was the question. So I'm going to almost assume that that's not the case, because, or is there anyone here who has a yes answer to that? If it's no, it's no. It's cool.
Well, we do fund alcohol, not tobacco.
Okay, cool. So then, again, some of the questions a lot of the people are answering, I believe, are something you must do. You must reach out straight to these individuals. They've all been very open, provided their details, and fire away and ask them directly. I hope I've tried my best to address most of your questions. I want to just go to our last poll, which is, what's the kind of webinars that you would like to have in the future, from whom? So I've launched that poll. Indicate which organizations you'd like to hear more about in the future webinars, either the people that are here today, or SARS, DTI, Wesgro, SMMEs. So just for interest's sake, it would be interesting to know any of those. Okay, I'm just scanning. There's a question here from WECBOF. During COVID, I applied nationally and provincially, both unsuccessfully. Is it possible that WECBOF can apply for a group of training providers and then distribute the fund? Do any of you do that type of thing, where people can apply as a group and then they distribute the funds?
That wouldn't be part of our mainstream funding or our direct lending. There may be certain social funds that we manage, where that kind of thing may happen, but it's not part of the scope of our direct lending.
Okay. So I see the future webinars question. People are saying a big spread, but there's a lot of people would like to see people who were not here today. Was SARS, Wesgro, SMMEs, DTIC, and then of course the entities that were here today have all been. So it seems like this type of thing works, and I hope you've all found this valuable. So folks, not to go beyond the time that we've allocated, I'm going to ask just to wrap up. So your last 30-second words of encouragement or wrap up. Let's start with you, Bongamusa, as we close this webinar, and then we will continue as a team to work on the questions in the box and make sure we answer them all at some stage. Okay. Right, so Bongamusa, just your last 30 seconds as a wrap-up. You on mute, Bongamusa.
Thank you. Well, to the entrepreneurs that are on this platform right now, you've taken the first step of getting information from entities like ours. Just follow that through with the work that needs to be put in place in order for you to be able to access funding. To grow your business, to start a new business, to acquire a business. One thing that is a differentiator between successful and unsuccessful business people at least from my experience, is hard work. I have found that most of the time, most of my clients that are hardworking are able to secure funds from entities like ours, and that is why some of entrepreneurs out there would complain to say, these funders keep on giving funds to the very same people. It's because those people actually put in the work, and they grow their business, and then they go back to apply for more funding for further expansion. Obviously, because they have that work ethic, they will always, be in a position to convince funders. So please just go out there and work hard.
Thank you, Bongo Musa. Thanks for that encouragement. Hanif, from your side, your final words?
We are open for business. You can visit our offices in Cape Town, in the Absa building. It's now called Foreshore Place. We're on the 24th floor. Sometimes it's better to discuss things face to face. I know we all nowadays work in this online environment, but maybe it's just useful sometimes to meet people. We obviously you have to abide by COVID regulations, but I've posted my number in the chat box, and I see you posted it in the Q&A. So you guys have got my number. Give me a call if you want to discuss anything. Thanks.
Thank you, Hanif. Thank you so much for all and for being so open with all your details and everything. Sean, your last words?
Yes, thanks, Rashid. Yeah, I will echoing what both my colleagues are saying. I mean, Musa said it's really hard work, guys. It's being an entrepreneur, it's the most difficult but most rewarding job there is. It's actually the best job there is. So really hard work, is key to this. Work hard on building, stakeholder relationships. One guy told me once, every single person is your client. Whatever business, if you have that mindset as an entrepreneur, the guy on the street to your biggest client, you should treat each and everyone as your client, and show that sort of commitment, and once you have that sort of energy around you, your business will gradually grow, because being an entrepreneur is really about how you sell your business to the market, and from my side, closing words is that, I would like to see you guys, like Haniva said, I actually prefer site visits. I like to go to the business and see the operation or what you want to start. So we are open for business, and keep pushing, keep working hard towards your business. This is not a pipe dream. We need entrepreneurs in this country. So keep pushing, keep trying, never give up. I think that will be my closing remarks. Never give up, regardless of the challenges that you face. Thanks.
Thank you. And so thank you. I just want to thank you, Sean, Hanif, Bongo Musa. You've been fantastic panel, and to everyone in the audience, you can post your email address there, but it's really in your court to reach out to these individuals. So I'm gonna hand back to Joshua just to wrap up, and thank you to the whole team for organizing this. Josh, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashid, and thank you for facilitating, I think, quite an interesting conversation. Colleagues, I'm not going to keep it too long. I think just seeing three issues that I want to highlight, and I think Bongo Musa highlighted that issue, the importance of doing your homework and ensuring, I think what we always tell businesses is develop your data warehouse of information before even submitting applications for funding. And I think what is critical is your ability to respond to funders once they raise certain issues that you must respond to. And I think what came out critically is the importance of the quality information. And we trust that this session has helped you to kind of look at overcoming some hurdles when you do apply for funding from different funders. And I think the critical thing around accessing, being able to demonstrate that you've got access to markets and your ability to repay your loan is quite critical areas. So I want to thank the panelists, and I thank them for their openness in terms of availing the information. And audience members, I can assure you, these panelists are quite keen and open to assist and support businesses. It's not oftentimes that people share their cell numbers and personal details. So thank you again for the panelists for making the time to be part of this interesting conversation. And I want to thank you as the entrepreneurs and the SMMEs for your contribution to job creation and growing this Western Cape, the South African economy. And I want to thank you for hanging in there, as the DDG indicated earlier on. for your tenacity that despite the challenges that COVID posed, even before COVID, you kind of hanging on there and making sure that you make a success of your business and ensuring that you can continue employing people and growing this beautiful province and country that we have. So thank you very much for your participation, and we look forward to engaging you in future. Thank you so much.